Jungkook was shaking when Jimin walked away, but what he did next melted everyone. Red heart #fire loudly crying face. Jungkook didn't feel the cold until the backstage door slammed behind Jimin, leaving behind only the echo of his voice, raw, trembling, and frighteningly quiet. If you lie to me one more time, I swear I won't come back. For a moment, Jungkook just stood there, chest rising in uneven waves, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like a taunt. The corridor smelled like dust and electricity, the kind that clings to your skin at the end of a long rehearsal. But none of that was what made his hands shake. It was the look in Jimin's eyes, hurt, sharp, and strangely distant, as if he were watching someone he no longer recognized. Jungkook pressed his back against the concrete wall, fingers curling into fists. He hated how he always froze like this when things truly mattered. He hated the tremor in his breathing. But more than anything, he hated that Jimin walked away believing something that wasn't true. The muffled thump of Jimin's footsteps grew fainter and fainter beyond the door. It felt like pieces of Jungkook were being carried away with every step. He pushed off the wall and stumbled forward, instinct burning through him stronger than logic. But before he reached the exit, a memory unwelcome and vicious rose like a ghost. Flash of a dark studio. A harsh voice he once obeyed too easily. A promise he made to himself never to let anyone see that past again. That past was the reason he hadn't told Jimin everything. That past was the reason he might lose him now. The hallway blurred for a second as Jungkook inhaled sharply, trying to shove down the panic clawing up his throat. His breath stuttered. He brought a hand to his chest. Old habit, old wound. Not now, he whispered to no one, voice cracking. Please, not now. The tremor in his hands worsened beyond the door. Jimin was already gone. The rehearsals had been intense all day, but this argument wasn't about dance, music, or perfectionism. It was about trust. Something fragile. Something Jungkook had been clinging to without realizing it was slipping. He forced himself through the exit. Warm night air slapped his face. Rain-scented, heavy, and humming with the neon glow of the city. The alley behind the building was narrow, dim, and echoing with distant traffic. And there, half-lit by a flickering street lamp, stood Jimin, shoulders hunched and hands in his pockets, staring at the ground like it held all the answers he'd been looking for. His silhouette looked smaller like this. Or maybe Jungkook had never realized how much light Jimin carried inside him until he saw him without it. Jimin, Jungkook called out, voice breaking. Jimin didn't turn, the silence stretched, thin and sharp. Jungkook approached slowly, afraid that one wrong step might shatter everything. His heartbeat hammered against his ribs, each pulse begging him to speak, to confess, to fix something he wasn't sure he even knew how to fix. Please look at me, he said, softer this time. Jimin's jaw tensed, and he exhaled a long, tired breath. When he finally turned, his eyes weren't angry. They were wounded. And that was worse. So much worse. Why didn't you just tell me? Jimin asked, voice barely above a whisper. Jungkook swallowed, throat dry as sand. The truth was a weight he'd been carrying so long it felt fused to his bones. Because I was scared, he admitted. Because I thought if you knew everything, you'd see me differently. Jimin's expression flickered, pain, confusion, a hint of something softer. See you differently? Jungkook, I already see you more clearly than anyone else does. The words hit Jungkook like a punch and a lifeline at once, but then Jimin added quietly, or at least I thought I did. Something inside Jungkook snapped. He stepped closer, the sound of his boots echoing off the wet pavement. The world felt unbearably fragile, like the moment before glass hits the floor. You still do, Jungkook said. You see more than I want anyone to see. That's why it scares me. Rain began to fall, gentle at first, then heavier, turning the alley into a soft chorus of water on concrete. Droplets clung to Jimin's hair, slid down his jaw, shimmered against the tremble in his breath. Jungkook moved closer, closer. Close enough to feel Jimin's breath hitch. The air between them crackled with something raw and electric. I'm tired of running from things that hurt, Jungkook said, voice rough. And I'm tired of making you think you're one of them. For the first time since the argument started, Jimin's gaze softened, just slightly. But he didn't step closer, didn't step away. He stood suspended between fear and hope. What are you trying to say? Jimin asked. Jungkook's hands were still shaking, but he reached out anyway, slowly, giving Jimin every chance to pull back. His fingertips brushed Jimin's sleeve, barely there, But enough to anchor him. I'm trying to say I'm done hiding from you. Jimin's breath caught. The rain kept falling, and Jungkook, trembling but determined, finally let the words escape that he had buried for years. I trust you. More than anyone. That's the truth I should have said earlier. The look on Jimin's face, astonishment, relief, something warm blooming behind the hurt, was enough to melt the worst parts of Jungkook's fear. Jimin's voice came out quiet, careful. Then don't walk in circles around me anymore. Jungkook exhaled shakily, nodding. I won't. Not again. They stood there, soaked in rain and tension and the fragile beginning of something healing. Jimin lifted a hand, brushed Jungkook's cheek lightly with the back of his fingers, a gesture small but earth-shattering. Something about the unspoken tenderness made Jungkook's eyes sting. You're shaking, Jimin murmured. Jungkook let out a breathy laugh that wasn't quite a laugh. I know. I get like this when I'm scared of losing something important. Jimin's hand lingered on his cheek just a second longer. Then don't let it go. Jungkook didn't. He stepped forward and pulled Jimin into a tight, trembling embrace. Jimin melted into him with a soft sigh, arms slowly wrapping around Jungkook's back, pulling him closer despite everything. The rain softened, the city noise faded, and for the first time that night, Jungkook felt steady. He whispered into Jimin's shoulder, voice barely audible, I'll tell you everything. Just stay. Jimin's grip tightened. I'm here. The storm outside them raged on, but the one between them finally began to settle. The rain had stopped hours ago, but the dampness still clung to Jungkook's clothes as he paced the dimly lit practice room, replaying Jimin's voice in his head over and over. The hug they shared outside earlier had steadied him, but now that Jimin wasn't in the room, all the unspoken truths pressed in around him like shadows. He ran a hand through his messy hair, breathing hard even though he wasn't dancing. It felt like every nerve in his body had been rewired, humming with something dangerous. The mirror in front of him threw his reflection back with merciless clarity, eyes dark, jaw clenched, shoulders tight with tension he didn't know how to unravel. Then the door clicked open. Jimin stepped inside. He wasn't wearing the rain-soaked clothes from earlier. He wasn't trembling. He wasn't avoiding eye contact. He just leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, gaze steady and unreadable, as if he'd made up his mind about something during the time they'd been apart. You're still here, Jimin said, voice low. Jungkook froze mid-step. The air between them shifted instantly, hotter, heavier, and electric. You told me to stay, he replied, tone quieter than he intended. Jimin pushed off the door and walked toward him slowly, each step deliberate. Jungkook's pulse thundered so loudly he wondered if Jimin could hear it. When Jimin stopped in front of him, close enough that Jungkook could feel the warmth of his breath, he tilted his head slightly. I didn't expect you to listen. Jungkook swallowed hard. I'm not running anymore. Jimin studied him, eyes moving across his features like he was searching for cracks, lies, truth, something deeper. His fingers twitched at his side, as if resisting the urge to reach out. You said you'd tell me everything, Jimin murmured. So tell me why you lied earlier. Jungkook tensed. The question hit him with the force of a punch, not because he didn't know the answer, but because the answer was tangled with memories he'd buried too deep for too long. He stepped back, shaking his head. It's not easy. Jimin followed him, closing the distance again, refusing to let him retreat. Then at least try. Don't make me feel like I'm fighting you alone. That landed hard. Jungkook's voice cracked. I wasn't trying to hide it from you. I just didn't want you to see that part of me. What part? Jimin asked quietly. The part that's weak. The silence that followed wasn't cold, it was molten. Jimin's eyes softened, but his jaw tightened like he was holding back something fierce. You think weakness is what scares me, he whispered. Jungkook dared to meet his eyes. Isn't it? Jimin stepped closer, so close their chests almost brushed. What scares me is being shut out. What scares me is watching you break and pretending I'm not allowed to hold the pieces. Jungkook's breath stuttered, then Jimin said something that nearly stopped his heart. Look at me when you're falling apart. Not away. The room suddenly felt too small, too warm, too charged. Jungkook couldn't stop the confession rising in his chest even if he tried. I don't know how to let someone see all of it, he said, voice trembling. Not the past. Not the panic. Not the nightmares. None of it. Then start with me, Jimin whispered. Jungkook's lungs burned, I shouldn't put that weight on you, he said. You don't get to decide what I can or can't carry, Jimin shot back, voice sharp but tender beneath the surface. That was the moment Jungkook lost whatever fragile control he had left. He grabbed Jimin's wrist, not rough, but urgent, and pulled him closer. Their faces were inches apart now, breaths mixing, the room vibrating with tension that felt like it could crack open the world. Why are you doing this? Jungkook asked, voice hoarse. Jimin didn't flinch. Because I care about you, Jungkook. And because I'm tired of pretending I don't. The honesty in those words hit Jungkook with terrifying force, terrifying because it felt good. Too good. And good things had always been the first to disappear in his life. Before he could stop himself, Jungkook's hand lifted to Jimin's jaw, fingers brushing warm skin. Jimin's breath caught, a soft sound that sent heat spiraling through Jungkook's chest. You're going to ruin me, Jungkook whispered. Jimin's eyes darkened. You think you're the only one who's scared in this? Jungkook froze. Jimin moved his hand slowly, sliding it up Jungkook's chest until his palm rested over his heartbeat, a gesture intimate enough to make Jungkook's knees go weak. You're shaking again, Jimin murmured. I know, Jungkook said. Why? Because, Jungkook swallowed, voice raw. Because every time you look at me like that, I feel like I'm losing control. Jimin's lips parted. And is that a bad thing? Jungkook didn't answer with words. He stepped forward, pressing their foreheads together, breathing Jimin in like oxygen. Jimin's hands slid around his waist without hesitation, pulling him closer until their bodies aligned perfectly. Heat poured through him, mixing with fear, want, and something dangerously close to longing. Tell me the truth, Jimin whispered, voice slightly trembling now. What did you think I'd see if you opened up to me? Jungkook's voice was barely audible. A version of me that doesn't deserve you. Jimin flinched like the words physically hurt him. He lifted Jungkook's face with both hands, forcing him to meet his gaze. No escape, no hiding, nowhere to run. Don't you ever say that again, Jimin said, tone fierce and trembling. Don't you ever put yourself beneath me like that. Jungkook felt everything, shame, relief, desire, fear, crash into each other at once. You don't know what I've done, he whispered. Then tell me, Jimin said. And let me decide if I'll stay. Don't push me away before I even hear you. Jungkook's heart felt like it was splitting open. There was someone, he began, voice faltering. Someone from my old company. Someone who controlled everything I did. Someone who made me believe I owed him everything. And even after I cut ties, he didn't stop pulling at me. Jimin's grip tightened. Is he still contacting you? Yes. And you didn't tell me because I didn't want you to get dragged in, Jungkook said. He's manipulative. Vicious. And he knows how to twist things. Jimin's expression shifted: anger, protectiveness, fear for Jungkook. You're not dealing with this alone anymore. Jungkook shook his head. Jimin, no, Jimin cut him off. You're not. The finality in his voice sent a shiver down Jungkook's spine. Jimin's hand moved from Jungkook's jaw to the back of his neck, pulling him close in a way that felt like an anchor. Every breath between them grew hotter, faster, heavier. Let me fight this with you, Jimin said, and if it hurts you. Jungkook whispered, then we get hurt together, Jimin answered. But I'm not leaving. Something inside Jungkook erupted, fear turning into relief, relief into longing, longing into something he couldn't name. He pressed his forehead against Jimin's again, voice breaking. I don't deserve you. And yet I'm still here, Jimin whispered. The room hummed with tension so thick it felt alive. Their breaths mingled, their hands clung, their voices trembled with truths that neither of them had been brave enough to say before, and somewhere in the space between them, all the fear, all the hurt, all the secrets, something new began to take shape. Something raw. Something powerful. Something that could destroy them or save them, depending on how tightly they held on. The night stretched long after their confrontation in the practice room, but neither of them slept. Jimin paced the dorm's living area with a quiet intensity, arms folded tightly across his chest, replaying Jungkook's confession in his mind like a scratched record. Every detail gnawed at him, this mysterious man from Jungkook's past, the manipulation, the grip he still had. It stirred something sharp inside Jimin, something protective and unsettlingly fierce. Jungkook sat on the couch, elbows on his knees, fingers laced together so tightly the skin around his knuckles paled. The soft glow from the lamp cast a warm halo around him, but nothing about him looked warm. He was tense, shoulders rigid, jaw locked as if holding words he wasn't sure he should speak. Jimin finally stopped pacing. What exactly does he want from you? Jungkook hesitated, and Jimin felt his stomach twist at the silence. Jungkook. He wants control, Jungkook said quietly. He wants to remind me that he made me. That without him, I'd still be nobody. Jimin's expression hardened. That's not true. Not even close. I know that, Jungkook whispered. But he knows how to talk in a way that makes you forget. Then let me remind you, Jimin said, stepping closer. Jungkook's eyes flickered up, dark and vulnerable, like he was torn between reaching for Jimin and pulling away before he could make things worse. He sent someone after me tonight, Jungkook said abruptly. Jimin froze. What do you mean? At the rehearsal building, Jungkook said. I didn't want to scare you, but when you walked away earlier, someone followed me inside. Who? I didn't see his face. Just his voice. His footsteps. Jungkook swallowed, throat tight. He said I was making a mistake. He said I still owed him. Jimin's pulse quickened with fear and anger. Why didn't you tell me right away? Because I didn't want you to get dragged into this, Jungkook said softly. I thought if I handled it alone, you wouldn't worry. Jimin's voice cracked as he snapped. I'm already worrying. Jungkook's breath hitched at the rawness in Jimin's tone. You don't get it, Jimin continued, stepping closer. Watching you fall apart alone hurts more than anything that man could ever do to me. Jungkook lifted his face slowly, eyes wide, something unguarded shining through. I didn't want to be a burden to you. That's not how this works, Jimin said. You don't get to choose which parts of you I care about. He sat down next to Jungkook, close enough for their knees to touch, and the tension thickened, humming between their breaths. Neither of them moved away. Tell me what is after, Jimin said, voice steadier now. Jungkook inhaled deeply. He wants me to sign a contract again. A private one. Off the record. He wants to take a cut from everything I earn. Jimin's jaw clenched. That's extortion. He calls it loyalty. And you believe him? No, Jungkook whispered. But I'm scared. He knows things about me. What things? Jungkook's gaze dropped to the floor, fingers trembling again. Things I've never told anyone. Things from before debut. Things I don't want the world to know. Jimin reached forward, slowly, giving Jungkook time to retreat. When Jungkook didn't, Jimin placed a gentle hand on his arm, grounding him. Jungkook shivered under the touch, not with fear, but with something achingly fragile. You don't have to face this alone anymore, Jimin said softly. Not while I'm here. Jungkook whispered. Why are you fighting so hard for me? The silence that followed was thick, charged, and dangerous in a way that wasn't about threat, something emotional, something too honest. Jimin exhaled shakily. Because the idea of losing you makes me feel sick. Because every time you push me away, I want to pull you right back. Jungkook's breath stuttered, and because, Jimin continued, voice trembling despite the determination, I can't stand the thought of someone else hurting you. Not after everything I've seen in your eyes tonight. Jungkook closed his eyes for a moment, fighting the tightness in his chest. When he opened them again, the vulnerability there made Jimin's heart clench. You're not supposed to be this good to me, Jungkook whispered. Maybe you're just not used to someone choosing you, Jimin replied. Jungkook let out a shaky inhale. I'm scared to let you. Then let me be the one thing you're not scared of. Jungkook didn't respond. He simply leaned forward, resting his forehead against Jimin's shoulder, breath warm and uneven against his skin. Jimin froze in surprise, then relaxed into the moment, sliding a hand slowly up Jungkook's back, feeling the tension melt beneath his palm. Jungkook whispered against him, I don't know how to protect you from this. You don't have to protect me from you, Jimin said softly. Just trust me enough to let me in. Jungkook's fingers curled into Jimin's shirt, gripping it tightly. He stayed like that, pressed close, trembling, seeking warmth as if Jimin was the only steady place left in the world, and Jimin didn't move. Didn't breathe too loudly. Didn't dare break the moment by speaking too soon. Instead, he kept his hand steady on Jungkook's back, feeling the rhythm of his breathing, the unspoken fear, the unspoken longing, the unspoken relief of finally being held. When Jungkook finally pulled back, Their faces were unbearably close, close enough for Jimin to see the way uncertainty and hope flickered inside him like twin flames. If that man comes near you again, Jimin murmured, you tell me first. And if I'm scared? Jungkook asked, tell me anyway. And if I fall apart? Then fall apart here, Jimin whispered. Not alone. Jungkook's eyes glistened in the warm lamplight. He didn't cry, but the emotion there was thick enough to shatter him from the inside out. I don't deserve you, Jungkook breathed softly. Then let me decide that, Jimin replied. The air between them pulsed again with charged tension, not chaotic, not explosive, but deep and trembling with something that felt dangerously close to devotion. Jungkook lowered his gaze to Jimin's lips for half a second before catching himself, jerking his gaze away, face warming with something like panic and want. Tangled together, Jimin saw it. Felt it. But didn't push. Instead, he said quietly, come sit closer. Jungkook hesitated, but then he did. He moved until their shoulders touched, until their warmth overlapped, until the silence wrapped around them like a fragile truce. Jungkook leaned into him again, slower this time, less desperate, more intentional, and Jimin let him. The night outside the window was dark and still. Inside, everything felt like it was shifting, slowly, dangerously, beautifully. Something had changed between them, and both of them felt it. The sun had barely risen when Jungkook jolted awake, breath coming in harsh bursts as if he had run miles in his sleep. Sweat clung to his skin, cold and sticky, and his heart pounded against his ribs with a force that bordered on painful. The nightmare, no, the memory, still clung to him like damp smoke. The voice in the dream, low and taunting, echoed in his skull. You'll never escape me. He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to suppress the tremor in his hands. For a moment he just sat there on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, fighting the urge to scream or break down or run until his legs collapsed. The weight of last night's conversation with Jimin hovered over him like a fragile shield against something much darker. A soft sound came from the doorway. You okay? Jungkook's head snapped up. Jimin stood there, hair messy, eyes tired but alert, wearing a loose sweatshirt that hung off one shoulder in a way that made Jungkook's throat tighten. There was a softness in his expression, but also a sharpness, a blade-like awareness that told Jungkook he hadn't slept much either. Jungkook forced a breath. I didn't mean to wake you. You didn't, Jimin said quietly, stepping into the room. I wasn't sleeping. Jungkook looked away. Nightmares? Not about me, Jimin replied, stopping in front of him. I was worried about you. The words hit Jungkook with disarming honesty, and for a moment he couldn't meet Jimin's gaze. It felt too intimate, too exposing. Jimin sat beside him on the bed, close enough that their thighs brushed. The contact sent warmth through Jungkook's chilled skin, grounding him more than he wanted to admit. What did you see? Jimin asked gently. Jungkook shook his head. I don't want to talk about it. Because it hurts? Jimin asked. Because I don't want to put that image in your head. Jimin leaned a little closer. You don't get to shield me from your pain like it's something I'm too weak to handle. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Jungkook's voice cracked. I don't want you to see me the way he did. Jimin inhaled sharply, anger flaring in his eyes, not at Jungkook, but at the shadow that still clawed its way into Jungkook's life. You're not him, Jimin said, tone firm. And nothing you tell me could ever make me look at you the way he did. Jungkook let out a shaky breath. He wanted to believe it. God, he wanted to. But fear had a way of painting lies inside your own skull. Jimin reached out, fingers brushing Jungkook's wrist lightly. Jungkook startled at the contact, then relaxed slowly, his breath catching from the warmth alone. You're shaking again, Jimin murmured. I know. Let me help. Jungkook hesitated. But then he nodded. Jimin took Jungkook's hands, gently prying them from the fists they had curled into. His touch was warm, steady, patient. Jungkook felt the tremors ease, just a little. Do you want to tell me what happened in the nightmare? Jimin asked. Jungkook closed his eyes. He told me I'd ruin everything. That no one would want me when they know the truth. That you'd leave. That I'd end up exactly where he found me. And do you believe him? Jimin whispered. Sometimes, Jungkook admitted. When the fear gets bad. Jimin's grip tightened. Then listen to me instead. I'm not going anywhere. The simplicity of it nearly undid Jungkook. Before he could respond, Jimin's phone buzzed from the bedside table. He glanced at the screen, and his expression changed instantly. Sharp. Alert. Disturbed. Jungkook's stomach tightened. What is it? Jimin hesitated before turning the screen toward him. An unknown number. A message short. Venomous, tell him to stay quiet. This is my last warning. Jungkook felt ice crawl up his spine. He contacted you? Jungkook whispered, voice cracking. Jimin nodded. Jungkook stood abruptly, panic sweeping over him like a tidal wave. No. No, no, no. He can't drag you into this. Jimin, I'm sorry, stop, Jimin said firmly, standing as well. Look at me. Jungkook couldn't. His chest tightened until it hurt to breathe. Jimin reached out quickly, grabbing Jungkook's forearm, pulling him closer with gentle insistence. Their faces were inches apart now, Jungkook's breath shallow and uneven. Hey, Jimin whispered. Don't spiral. I'm here. He threatened you, Jungkook said in a broken voice. And Jimin, he's dangerous. So am I, Jimin said sharply. When it comes to protecting the people I care about. Jungkook froze. The intensity in Jimin's eyes was unmistakable, fierce, protective, unflinching. It scared Jungkook. It steadied him. It made his heart ache in ways he wasn't prepared for. You don't understand, Jungkook said weakly. If he's contacting you now, it means he's getting desperate. And when he's desperate, he can get reckless. Then we face him together, Jimin said, voice unwavering. You could get hurt. So what? Jungkook grabbed Jimin's shoulders with trembling hands. I can't lose you. Jimin's breath hitched. For a moment he didn't speak. Instead, he lifted his hands to Jungkook's face, cupping his cheeks gently, thumbs brushing lightly under his eyes. You're not going to lose me, he said, voice low, steady, and painfully sincere. The only thing you're losing right now is sleep. Jungkook let out a weak laugh, more of a choked sound than anything. Jimin's thumbs moved in slow circles, calming him, grounding him in a way no one else ever could. Look at me, Jimin repeated. Jungkook did. And in that moment, their breaths mingled, warm and shaky, the room shrinking until there was nothing but the space between their mouths, their hands, their hearts beating too hard to ignore. I'm not afraid of him, Jimin whispered. I'm afraid of you pushing me away when I'm trying to stay. Jungkook's throat constricted. I don't want to push you away. Then stop acting like you're poison. Jungkook's breath trembled. I don't know how to be this close to someone. Not without messing everything up. Then let me meet you halfway. Jimin leaned in, not kissing him, but close enough to feel every exhale, every tremor, every piece of fear and warmth bleeding from Jungkook's skin. Jungkook closed his eyes, feeling the weight of Jimin's forehead resting against his own. It was grounding. Intimate. Dangerous in a way that felt like surrender. When Jungkook finally spoke, it was a whisper. I can't lose you. You won't, Jimin said softly. Not unless you make me walk away. Jungkook's hands tightened on Jimin's shoulders, not to push him back, but to pull him closer. Jimin's breath caught, a soft sound that sent warmth spiraling through Jungkook's chest. The world outside their small room was falling apart, threats, shadows, the past clawing its way back. But here, in the sliver of space between them, something else was forming. Not peace, not safety, something fiercer. Something that had been waiting to break the surface. The silence after the storm was almost too clean, too fragile, like the dawn itself was afraid to breathe. Jungkook stood by the window, the city lights flickering across his face as if unsure which version of him they should illuminate, the furious one from hours ago, the terrified one from minutes ago, or the man now trembling with something dangerously close to hope. Behind him, Jimin closed the door softly, as if loudness alone could break whatever fragile truce was forming. His voice came out low, tired, but steady. Jungkook, we can't keep doing this. Jungkook let out a breath that shook his whole frame. I know, he said, not turning around. But I didn't know how to stop without losing you. Jimin's footsteps were slow, careful, yet deliberate. You were never losing me. You were losing yourself and dragging me with you. Jungkook turned then, finally, and his eyes, raw, glossy, open in a way he never let anyone see, landed on Jimin like gravity, like an apology made flesh. I'm sorry, he whispered. For the anger. The jealousy. The way I talked to you. The way I couldn't talk to you. For shutting down. For blowing up. For everything. Don't apologize for all of it, Jimin said, a small, weary smile tugging at him. Some of it was because you cared too much. Some of it was because you didn't know how to care in a way that didn't hurt you. Jungkook swallowed. Do you hate me? If I hated you, Jimin murmured, stepping closer, I wouldn't still be here. Jungkook exhaled shakily as Jimin stopped right in front of him. The tension that rose between them wasn't sharp anymore, it was warm, charged, a little scared, but undeniably alive. Jimin looked up at him, eyes soft but blazing at the same time. We can't keep punishing each other for the things we're afraid to say. Then let me say it now, Jungkook breathed. I love you. I don't know when it started, maybe it was always there, maybe I ignored it, maybe I was scared of what it meant, maybe I'm still scared, but I love you, Jimin. Enough to shake when you walk away. Jimin closed his eyes for a second, just a second, like he needed strength to absorb those words without falling apart. When he opened them again, they glowed. You think I didn't know? Jimin whispered. You think I wasn't terrified too? Jungkook's breath hitched. You. Jimin laughed softly, with a crack in it that sounded like a heart finally unclenching. I loved you first, idiot. Something in Jungkook broke then, but not the painful kind. It was the kind that released him, like a fist opening after holding on too tightly for too long. He reached for Jimin's face with hands that were still trembling, and Jimin leaned into the touch like he had been waiting for it since forever. You drive me crazy, Jimin murmured, brushing their foreheads together. You make me furious, you make me worried, you make me want to scream, but you also make me feel alive in a way nothing else ever did. I'll get better, Jungkook said, the promise solid, heavy, real. Not for you, for me. But I want you beside me while I do. I will be, Jimin replied. As long as you let me in instead of pushing me away. Jungkook nodded, throat tight. Then stay. I'm here, Jimin said, slipping his arms around him, not urgently, not desperately, but like someone choosing something steady and true. I'm not walking away again. Jungkook pulled him closer, burying his face in Jimin's shoulder, breathing him in like relief, like home. The city hummed outside. The room felt finally aligned. And the storm that had been brewing between them for months softened into something tender, something warm, something they could finally name without fear. When Jimin pulled back just enough to look up at him, he smiled, small, luminous, the kind of smile that rewired a future. So, Jimin murmured, voice teasing at the edges but still dipped in emotion, what now? Jungkook brushed a thumb across his cheek, gentle, certain. Now, he said, we start over. But this time, together. Jimin nodded, leaning in just a little, just enough to seal the truth of it. Together, he echoed. And for once, there was no cliff, no breaking point, no runaway steps or slammed doors, just the quiet, powerful certainty of two people choosing to stay, choosing to try, choosing each other. The storm had passed, and in the soft, steady afterglow, it finally made sense why everyone said they melted when Jungkook didn't let Jimin walk away again, because this time, he didn't let fear speak for him. He let love do it, and Jimin stayed the end.